Welcome to the Digital Ascent Podcast. This is episode 0003. Today we'll be discussing TikTok security and how to get into the IT industry. We hope you enjoy.
Okay, cool. So real quick before we dig in, I want to say thank you all of our listeners for listening to the Digital Ascent Podcast. This is episode 0003. And we're going to be talking first about TikTok is a peeping Tom, and what does that mean for you, the consumer, and what should you do about it? And then we're going to segue that into breaking into IT, and hopefully we're going to come out. We're going to hope to come out of here with some good tips. Hopefully after listening to this episode, you feel like getting into IT is a realistic goal for you. And you should feel like that's a realistic goal. I want to talk a bit about why it's a good goal and a realistic goal. If you're looking for that career change, and just some tips where you might want to start going first. Check out this job, don't check out that job. Here's some here's some pros, here's some cons, whatever. But first, TikTok is a peeping Tom. So, TikTok obviously took the world by storm in 2020, 2019. I mean,
yeah, 2019, I think.
I was going to say, yeah, maybe a little earlier.
Yeah, I'm not into social media, so I don't really know. I just know suddenly my posts on Reddit stopped being Facebook posts and started being TikTok posts. And that's how I know the market share of whatever is the amount of posts that I see on the all threads on Reddit.
And 2017, by the way.
2017.
Yeah.
2017. All right. So
I thought it was a little earlier.
TikTok is owned by ByteDance. My understanding is that ByteDance is a company that is based out of China. And I think I'm going to bring this up again, but I just want to go ahead and say that the Chinese government does own 1% of ByteDance. It's not very much, but it is 1%. And that theoretically could give them access to ByteDance's data. Once again, we're going to get into that about why that may be bad. So from the top view, social media is an information harvesting engine. And you as the consumer don't think about it like that. You think about it as this is a place to put my cat photos and tell my friends that I want a vacation and show them how great your life is, right? And why they should want to be you. But at the end of the day, for a company, it's like, and I guess, excuse my coarseness here, but it's a wet dream of information. It tells them, what are you into? It tells them what type of ads to send you. It tells, when's your birthday. It'll tell them it'll tell your friends it's their birthday, so they know to go buy you something, right? And I mean, I'm sure some of the other very intelligent people can expand more upon that, but I mean, at the base of it, I think that we all can agree that social medias are they are the big data, in my opinion. It's like that's it, right? How do you guys feel about that? Is that a fair assessment to start with?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's a good baseline. Good baseline to
Yeah,
start.
it's a good baseline. It's a good baseline. There's way more.
There's so much more, but I mean, we got to start talking somewhere, because the next step is, well, what does that data mean? And to our government, that data means value. And that's why you can see that in February of 2020, the TSA and the Pentagon banned TikTok from being installed on mobile phones that were issued by those entities there. I'm sure part of it is that I bet, and I don't have TikTok, but what do you want to bet they got a geolocation thing on there? Oh, TikTok wants to see your location for whatever.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of other social, I know the focus here is TikTok, but I think that is common in all social media applications.
Yeah.
Not all applications in general.
And there's a million reasons why you'd want to do something like that. Most of them are focused on business analytics type stuff, right? But what if I, as a government, owned some percent of a social media company, and as part of that, I demanded that you give me access to data of users and location access data to people who were, say, in a foreign military, right? And I don't feel like I have to go any further. I can just let it stop there, and you can run wild. What happens if you have access?
Big time problems there.
Big time problems there.
I could actually just corroborate really quick. My wife was still in at the time. I'm Prime military, and my wife is Prime military, and she was in at the time. And the big push was, Matt, just like you said, like the government issued phones, but they also made like a secondary push where it didn't matter if you had a government issued phone or not. They made it aware, like they strongly, pushed, hey, you need to get the software off your phone, like immediately. So it was a big deal. Yeah, big deal.
So just so before everyone goes, well, there's Matt being paranoid again, and I have been told that I run a little paranoid, and I would argue that maybe I do, but that makes me good at my job. But this time it's not me being paranoid. The government's kicking this app off of our phone. You don't see them kicking off Facebook or Twitter or any of those other applications, and it's because they don't represent the same national security risk. And realistically, that's what it is. When you start talking about foreign governments having access to data, and you start talking about massive amounts of locational and behavioral pattern data, and this is going to come up again here in a minute. I just want to remind everybody that when Russia went to war, if your server was in Russia, it became Russia's server. They may not have the password to access your server, but they now have it, and they have all the data on it. And man, anybody who's really determined enough and has the amount of money and time and resources that a government does, I feel like they might be able to get in there, right? And so this is going to come up here in just a second. So in June, and it was late June, I don't have the exact dates, but I think on like the middle, like around the 17th, and then later on like the 28th, TikTok confirmed. There was a BuzzFeed report saying that that internal meetings, like voice recordings of internal meetings, over 70 meetings have been leaked, and that people who are based in China have access to U.S. consumer PII, or personal identifiable information. In this case, that means names, birth dates, maybe phone numbers or addresses, right? The worst case scenario would be social security number, but I hope you do not give a social media company your social security number. Just don't do that. They shouldn't.
You've got other problems if you've done that. Like,
if you've done that, you already messed up. But good luck.
Well,
with that.
and I'm sure there are plenty of them, because there's a lot of people making big bucks off of things like TikTok.
So
how are they getting payouts? They have to give them social security numbers. They have to have 1099s.
Yep.
So they're already up the river without the paddle on that one, I think.
So I want to go ahead and say that in response to all this, TikTok has been as part of those meetings. It became, I think I'm going to say this, it became known that Chinese-based personnel had access to PII, or personally identifiable information. As part of this, TikTok in response has said that that right now, U.S. user data is currently stored in the USA and in Singapore, in only those two locations, and that they are in the middle of migrating to Oracle's US-based cloud, where U.S. data would be processed exclusively and held exclusively in the U.S. I think it leaves you with some questions of.
I was gonna say, does it matter? Like
where are the backups?
Right. I was like, I think it would give a lot of people peace of mind knowing that. But my question comes down to who has access.
Yeah, just because it lives
where?
in the U.S.
From where?
Yeah, just because they live in the U.S. doesn't mean, or the data lives in the U.S. doesn't mean somebody with a VPN in China can't access it, right? So
exactly.
All right. So let me ask you a question here, because I just want to get caught up. I just want to get caught up here. So essentially, what you're expressing, Matt, is there was a leak in some way, shape, or form inside of TikTok's organization. And then I'm also hearing a bunch of other words on the other side of that, with like migration. Like, can you give me this in a nutshell of why? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I'm a little lost.
Homie.
It's not your fault.
Yeah, I got you. Like, it's all good.
Okay, cool.
No, I've been reading this stuff for hours, right? So you guys are all hearing the brain dump now.
Of course.
So it's something like this. Ideally, your consumer data is processed, and inside that means like it's stored, right? And like whatever's done with it is done in the country which you reside. And the reason you want to do that is because in case a Russia type event happens, then your data isn't like then your social security number and whatever isn't then in the hands of the Russians or whatever country it is, right? I'm not picking on the Russians. They just, it's current events, man. What do you want to do about it? And so I do want to say that TikTok did confirm that Chinese-based personnel do have access to U.S. user data, and that not all U.S. user data is in the U.S. So some is abroad in Singapore, and they understand that makes people uncomfortable, and they are looking to remediate and rectify that. They're going to do that by bringing all the data from overseas to U.S.-based data centers. In this case, that would be
And
Oracle.
so-
Oracle is a company in the U.S.
But here's part of my problem, right? If you're going to be a company as big as TikTok, you're going to have backdoors. There's no way. There's just no way. Like Brent was saying, there's no way that you're not going to have external access, even if it is located in the U.S. You can actively monitor it, sure, but I have a hard time thinking that they're going to willy-nilly release control like that.
Well, it's not like they don't have a U.S.-based presence, right? They have executives here in the U.S. and stuff. That all being said, I want to leave you guys all with one final note to think about, right? And I want to preface this again. I'm going to say it one more time. The Chinese government owns a 1% stake in ByteDance, which is the company that owns TikTok. And this is a quote from Brendan Carr. This is the current FCC commissioner. They have requested that Google and Apple remove this application from their stores, of which there's been no movement on. And he did it, and he said this along with that. He said, quote, TikTok doesn't just see users' dance videos. It collects search and browsing histories, keystroke patterns, biometric identifiers, draft messages, and metadata. Plus, it has collected the text, images, and videos that are stored on the device's clipboard. And that's end quote. And so that should mean that you should interpret that to say that if you've copied if you've copied a password out of your password manager and put it into a freaking application, then you open TikTok and it wasn't cleared off your password manager or off your device's clipboard. Now TikTok has your freaking password. So, I mean, I feel like I'm doing my part here, right? The TSA and the military says get rid of TikTok. The FCC says get rid of TikTok. They say that you should get rid of it because it's collecting your keystrokes and crap. So I mean, man, that's my 2 cents. I know things like TikTok, as well as other platforms, can be used to like share, great tips and tricks, or can like help provide videos or tutorials, much like we're about ready to provide here about getting into tech. But I mean, man, I gotta say, I recommend that if you want that type of stuff, you should get it from somewhere else. And we're actually going to have some recommendations where you can get good information like that here near the end of the episode.
We all have a wide variety of, applications on our phone that we're all aware are kind of like, tracking data in some way, shape, or form. And there is, a way for you to kind of taper off how much data is being tracked. But I think the difference that I just wanted to point out on top of all this great information that Matt has given us, the difference between an app like TikTok and every other application is that TikTok is much more invasive, and it belongs to a government that is not our own, or doesn't wholly belong, but where the data lives.
Partially.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We don't have complete jurisdiction over,
And can you
over
guess?
that data.
Can you guess what the top entertainment app is on the iOS right now?
TikTok, baby.
Is it TikTok?
TikTok is at the top. TikTok is at the top.
Yeah, so I just wanted to point that out. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those apps are also collecting your data. But what makes TikTok really bad in this scenario is that it is tracking data that the other 3 apps they aren't touching with a 10-foot pole because of the the stipulations that would come with that.
Man, it's the only one that's government owned. Is Twitter owned by the U.S. government? Does the U.S. government own any stake in Meta or Xbox Live or PS Now. I mean, or Discord
yeah.
or any. I mean,
Yeah,
man,
yeah.
I can just go like it doesn't. I can just list ad nauseum. Like, I mean, I guess arguably that the personnel and that we're part of the government are part of, you know, Parlor or Truther or whatever other social media websites there are out there. But I mean, it's just not the same, man. And like TikTok lives in above and beyond all the rest.
So I have a funny story about this very thing because me and Matt actually had a conversation about this offline, and it was funny because I have also been digging into it and reading it, and I went to some fellow tech coworkers and had a conversation and was like, man, you know, I've been saying some similar things to this, and, you know, it's being corroborated and it's some scary stuff. And they looked at me, they laughed, and was like, yeah, so I'm still going to use it.
But why though? What do you mean? Like,
Exactly.
what do you mean you're still going to
Exactly.
use it, man?
So here's the problem. Here's the problem is that how does it impact your day to day? It's not. They're there for the funny
it
memes
doesn't.
and they don't care. So
Yeah, it's like they don't even
it's a
realize
hard
the
thing to
damage.
convince somebody, right? So, and that's the other side of this coin, because I told my wife the exact same thing, and she still uses TikTok, and it's like, okay, well, you know the risks, and they still take them anyway. So how are you going to convince millions of people that
I was just talking
they
to my
should
wife
stop?
about this the other day. Yeah, Sean, this is a fantabulous point that you brought up. It's just like, hey, if it doesn't impact my day to day, you know what I mean? And I have some things like, you know, that I'm the same way with. If it's not really affecting my day to day, and like, you know, the pros outweigh the cons in my eyes, I'll just keep doing it. You know what I mean? I'll keep using the app, or, you know, playing the game or whatever it is, right? It's like that's the conversation that we're having to have internally with ourselves. You know what I mean? More and more as we go on. Like TikTok, whatever's going on with TikTok will probably be the norm for most applications in the next like 5 to 10 years, man. You know what I mean? Like just of how invasive they are, and because there aren't really a lot of regulating rules against like data privacy and with these devices, you know what I mean? Like not
Yeah,
really.
it's
Like
really
we're just
upsetting.
starting to get into that space. So yeah, it's a good point, Sean.
Here's the other part of that as well. I had another conversation with another friend, and we were just sitting chatting, and we were talking about some similar things. And I said, I bet you money that I can find out significant things about your life within like 5-10 minutes, just on my phone.
Oh, I bet you smoked it, dude. I bet it took no time.
And here's the thing: less than 5 minutes, I listed her grandmother, her mom, her dad, sister, her sister's children, their occupations, their previous living places, and their current living place, and phone numbers. Like I was pulling everything, and she just sat there mortified. And I said, "So here's the deal."
Did she just have this stuff on like her Facebook or something? Like
Bro,
how?
it's not just them. It's them. It's her friends.
Yep, it's a
All your
conglomeration of data that is.
Well,
like a
Maybe we
spider
shouldn't
web.
share it so that we're not promoting, you know, we're not giving would-be stalkers.
Well, the point is, it's so easy to get that information.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
That just that's all referred to as open source intelligence, and as
Right.
fishers are looking to like actually fish, like people who are spearfishing, that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing as they're going through and they're targeting. Spearfishing is when you go through and you send a phishing email, an email to trick somebody, but you send it to somebody specifically, somebody in accounts payable or accounts receivable, a CFO, someone like that. A secretary. Secretary.
The point of that wasn't to scare. The point of that wasn't to scare anybody, but it was to make a point that our data is kind of already out there,
It's very much out there.
and so privacy is kind of going the way of the dodo, which for me,
Yeah.
it kind of gets under my skin. I don't like that. I don't like not being able to obfuscate in any meaningful sense. And so for me, I don't want to give them any more than I have already. So that's the point I'm trying to make is, yes, it doesn't affect you day to day, but what about 5 years? What about 10 years? What does the landscape, like you said, Jordy, what does the landscape look like in the future? I don't know.
I'd encourage everybody to think about it in two ways. One is that it may not affect your day to day now, but I guarantee you, with all that data, people can draw conclusions that they can then use to make your life hard. And then the second thing is that I would encourage you to think about when you're not providing that data, you're making somebody else's life hard. Specifically, you're probably making somebody's life hard that does not have your best interest in part at heart. Whether that's somebody that's trying to derive more revenue from you, or a foreign country or a nation state that wants to make bad decisions, like push ads to help you make bad decisions to damage your country. It's weird to be like it's a patriotic thing to not use this app, but I think in this case it may actually be a patriotic thing not to use this app. It's kind of weird to say
So
that.
what about the people that are using it for their day to day though? Because there's a lot. Let's be honest. Despite the privacy concerns and another government taking our information, there's a lot of good information on all these platforms: TikTok, YouTube. I mean, heck, even Facebook groups and stuff like that. People join these platforms to get information. How many TikTok cooking videos have you seen? How many TikTok like tech tips and tricks have you seen? Like, I've seen plenty of them. Like, where it's not always about the meme. There's a lot of educational content up there that people have now grown used to seeing, and they follow people that are using this content. And there's a lot of people that have had successful careers on these platforms. And that kind of ties into our main topic for the day, is that I feel like a lot of our current generation of IT folks are using a lot of these platforms to get the upper hand on a lot of like your day-to-day, your current event sort of things, your 0 day. I've seen 0 days covered on some of these platforms before, where people jump up there real quick and they're like, hey, take a look at this.
Yep.
And so, I mean, how do we feel about that? Is there a better way? I guess is really what it comes down to. Or is this just the way of the industry now?
No, I think the absolute best thing that you can do is listen to this podcast. And I think that if you do that, then
Shameless plugging.
then you gotta get a win,
Oh my
baby.
gosh.
Hey, look, check it out. We don't collect. Well, we collect a little bit of data, right? We want your platform and stuff like that, but we ain't collecting your locational data, and we ain't sending it off to no foreign government. So I'm gonna say that maybe we step up there. Just saying. Just throwing it out there for everybody.
That's a good point. You get more return on your investment with Digital Ascent, and that's a guarantee.
Yeah, we get to know what platform that somebody used. I don't even think we get names on there. We get a platform that somebody used, and maybe an age bracket or something like that. And we know if you didn't finish the episode, and that's all. It's all anonymized. And once again, we're not sharing it with the government. So all these other companies, they're sharing that with the government. I'm agree with Jordy. We are really great ROI. You give us basically nothing, and you get to listen to us around a lot. We don't even have ads. I guess that's the closest thing to an ad.
A great point to all the information that you'll that was one of our longest current events segments.
It was,
and that was great. And now we're gonna put our money where our mouth is. We're gonna give you a bunch of information in return that if I guess this sort of thing applies to you if you're in the market for a new job, or maybe you have an interest in IT and you're trying to break into this industry. Well, the great thing about Digital Ascent is all four of the beautiful voices that you hear happen to be in the IT industry. So we decided to have the main topic for today be pointed at some good paths or routes that you can take to transition your way into the IT field. Bingo, bango, bongo.
Bingo, bango, bongo. I want to start out with a couple of stats to entice people who are thinking about it. So I took a look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and I don't have it pulled up in front of me, so I'm going to try and pull these from my memory. I do have the links in the show notes, so go look at the show notes. But there's a lot of different IT professions that you can get into. I think that a couple that we can focus on as the computer support specialist profession and the information security analyst profession. I like the information security analyst profession because I think it shows where the IT industry is going in the future. And I like the computer support specialist because that's your basic catch-all help desk position. There's a lot of names and titles for that position, and we'll cover that, right, to help you figure out what should you be searching for. But computer support specialist is looking, the average salary or the median salary is around $50,000 a year for that. And I think it's around 47,000 is what it said. And it's looking at a 10% growth between 2020 and 2030. And that's an average growth. So we're still looking, not only is it a sector that has been growing, but it's going to continue to grow an additional 10% per year for over the next few years. The information security analyst, which is kind of, to me, it looked like it was a catch-all for cybersecurity. That's looking at a 33% growth from 2020.
That's insane.
It's insane. It's massive.
33?
Yes.
Did I hear you right?
33% growth. And the reason why that matters is because that 10%
had the same. Jeez.
That dude, that computer support specialist, that's your entry level like grunt IT position. And I'm not really surprised to see that not growing, but that cybersecurity specialist, the information security analyst, those positions, the entry, like the beginning, and I'm going to call it entry level because I think that I view cybersecurity as a second tier of the IT career that primary, like the good jobs only become accessible after you're already an expert in, systems administration, networking, software development, policy and procedure management, all that stuff. But you need other stuff first to get to the security tier. Those jobs, those are 6-figure jobs. So, in terms of salary, so we're going to see a massive explosion.
If you had to put a timeline on that, like general, just so there's
General
some
timeline.
expectations there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think 10-year timeline is appropriate. If
Yeah.
I would say, I don't feel like it has to be 10 years. Hey man, people get lucky all the time.
You
I've
can
seen
fast
people
track it.
stumble
Yeah,
them. Man,
absolutely.
I've seen people stumble themselves up into stupid, amazing positions where I'm like, how are you getting to do that? And you've only had, for how much money? You've only been in the career for 5 years and it's getting lucky. Man,
Hey,
I
that's
think
me.
that you could also,
Shoot.
shoot down. I think that I've seen people waste their time and not act aggressively. And I think that's a key component of that 10-year timeline is aggressive action. And in both
Yeah.
like learning and driving your career where it needs to go, as opposed to let your career kind of drive itself. And but I think that's possible. So I totally think it's possible to move into IT and then get into one of these cybersecurity positions within 10 years that pays somewhere over $100,000 a year. And once again, not going to be easy. You're going to need a little bit of luck. A network helps out a lot.
Yeah, so let me ask a
ahead.
question here. Thank you. Let me ask a question here, just to clarify, Matt. The two jobs that you pointed out here. I know we're talking about a 10-year timeline, but as it's relevant to the audience that we would hope listen to this
Sure.
this episode, these are two fields. These two jobs that entry level security job and then your IT computer specialist or whatever. These are both entry level jobs that I don't want to say would be fairly easy because that's going to depend on who you are. But as far as your IT career is concerned, would be fairly easy, in the grand scheme of things. So these are jobs that ideally would be the job that you would be transitioning into. If you're not in IT now and that's that's what you're looking to get into, hopefully the steps that we give you now would kind of guide you into one of those jobs. So this information is all relevant, but I just wanted to make sure that we clarified that point there, that we are talking about the grand scheme of things, the long, 10-year planning in the picture, but all those things are possible through those entry level positions.
Yes.
And for more reasons than just, one, here or there. So do we want to just kind of rein it back a little tiny bit and then start with how do we get there? How do we get into those positions? What's that look like for us?
Sure. I do want to rein back the security stuff just and let people know that there are entry level positions into security where you don't really need experience and you don't need you don't need a degree and you don't need a lot of certifications either. Those are the SOC analysts or the security operation analysts positions, and those are available too. So where do we start? Like where do you start? If I'm Johnny Waiter, how do I get into IT? I would say that the first thing that you should do is you should look at your assets that you have on hand. And your primary assets are going to be your personality and positions that have helped you like in customer service style positions. Most beginning
soft skills.
Soft skills. Most beginning IT positions are going to be you picking up the phone and going, how can I help you, for somebody who's having a bad day? And
yeah, let's not get it twisted. IT at that stage, at the beginning stages, it's customer service. So if you're looking to get out of customer service into something that's not customer service, beginning IT is arguably maybe a little worse. Not to scare people off, but there is a lot of soft skilling.
Beginning IT is super customer service heavy, and that does change as you go through your career. I mean, I probably spent I spent my first like 4 years on various levels of the service desk, basically trying to get. I mean, and that's all customer service facing, taking inbound calls. And then I got into a position where I wasn't really on the desk anymore, and I was working on projects. And it's still like I still am talking to customers, but it's usually me making outbound calls at that point. And that's a big difference, because at that point I'm talking to people who are like also 7 years into their career, and they have titles like manager and
C-level, that type of stuff.
Yes, exactly. They're people who are not going to treat you like crap, because they have relationships they have to manage also. And those relationships are managed poorly if you start treating the help like the help, basically. And then now my position now, as I've risen through the ranks, I mean, I make calls sometimes. I talk to like the same 5 people, all the time. Occasionally I call other people, and usually they don't want to hear from me because of my title. So it does get better, but you got to grind it out.
All of the I'm in the I'm a service desk manager, right, and all of my guys, like, they're on the phone every day. Like, that's if they're at work, if they're not on PTO, if they're not sick, like, they are speaking to, at a minimum, a dozen different people, what I mean, externally. That's not to mention any of the collaboration that they're doing with their peers, or any of the escalated, resources that we have, or other team leads or whatever. It is a very, 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 very customer service, heavy job. So that's a good point to cover. Good reminder to throw out there. You're not going to get away from that. And there are some exceptions. There are some workarounds, but those are the exceptions. I've known very few people to break into IT and skip this part of the career. You know what I mean? Like, you don't just skip this.
If you've got bad communication skills, you're going to have a bad time. So I do encourage putting yourself out there a little bit, working on your communication skills, figuring out what kind of gets you out of that shell a little bit, to where you can talk to people with confidence, with intelligence and whatnot. And because you will have a very bad time if you're kind of a recluse and you're not used to interacting with people. And that's both on the internal level and the external level, like Jordan was talking about. You certain positions, you're going to be working a lot internally with your peers and your coworkers and your management, and some other positions you're going to be working with just the customers a lot, and most positions you're going to be working with both. So it's just something to kind of think about. That might be your first stop on the skills I need to learn train. Is the communication side.
Is the communication. So we have the communication, and just like Matt said, keeping up with this example. If you're Matt, what was the job that you used? I forgot. I want to use the same term. What did you say? Joe dishwasher?
Waiter,
is that what you said?
Sure.
Joe Waiter.
Joe Waiter. Oh, and it's because I think that any jobs that are customer service oriented jobs, those are huge. If you're
absolutely.
If you're in sales of any variety at all, if you are the front desk for somebody and you know how to put on a smile when you'd rather stab somebody in the face, you're perfect. Come on, man.
Absolutely.
I want to hire you for my help desk, brother.
Exactly. And hey, and to clarify, this is I've worked in fast food. I've worked in retail. Like, I'm
done it too,
happily
man.
making jokes about, you know what I mean? Like, I think we all have. So this is
Yeah.
not to, we're not making fun of, of
No,
those
like, this
careers.
is it.
We're just kind of just,
This is it.
we're commiserating together, And so, okay, so we have the communication. All right. So we've got Joe Waiter. All right. And we know he's great with serving people because that's what he's doing all day. He's in that mind space. All right? So now if we assume that Joe Waiter doesn't have any technical, expertise, how does Joe go about building that? What are the first steps for Joe to start building that technical expertise, gentlemen?
So other than listening to our podcast, as I've mentioned, before,
Shameless. You're on something, man.
Yeah,
What's going on?
specific-
Just absolutely
specific-
shameless.
specifically this episode, I I would say that then they should go check out the Microsoft certifications. Microsoft has first of all, everybody, you can just go sign up. You get $200 free credit every single month for Azure. You go build out lab stuff in there. Get a little.
We'll
home
have
lab
these linked
going.
in the show notes, by the
All
way.
linked in the show
we'll have
notes.
all of this. I think it's like Microsoft.com or MicrosoftLearn.com or something like that. It's free learning.
Yeah, and then you can go get a couple certifications real quick that I think will set you apart from that side of the house. I personally think would be the AZ900, which is to get your feet wet with Azure, and then the AZ400, which is how do I actually use this behemoth of a platform. If you don't want to do that and you really just want to start out simple, I recommend the A+. A+ is a great
Yeah, I
way
was
to
about to
show
say.
people that you want to. Man, A+ is a good way to show people that you want to learn. And then
Guys,
if
I can
you're-
actually
Yeah.
I can speak to this a little bit because this is I'd utilize the same path. So that's also a good point of reassurance for anybody that's listening. We're not just pulling this out of thin air. Like I said, these are all these are trends that we've noticed, we've picked up on. I'm almost positive that everybody here has been involved in hiring processes for our different departments at various levels. You know what I mean? So this is all stuff that we know works. And just to speak to that, this is what I did. I made a career change. I, was an infantryman in the Army, and I got out in 2017 and decided I wanted to get into, IT and tech. Didn't want to go the college route, and so I went the certification route. There's more to that, but for the sake of time, I went the certification route. I think AZ900 is one that I have. I got one of Microsoft's beginner MTA networking fundamentals certifications, and I worked a little bit on a big home project with some other friends or associates at the time, and that's what landed me my job, that and networking, and we'll touch on those things more as we go on. But I just wanted to highlight that I can speak to those things. I've done these things, and I know people who have done these things, and more often than not, a lot of us have taken the same first couple steps. You know what I mean? Where you get a couple certifications, or maybe you've got a college degree, and you're starting around that service desk. You know what I'm saying? So hey, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, the last one that I would recommend is if you take a look at Cisco's Certified Networking Associate, that's the CCNA, then if you can nab that sucker, and you can actually
CCNA,
yeah,
baby.
man, yeah, if you can get CCNA and you can internalize what it's talking about. Cisco has some good labs online. You got to pony up for them a couple $100 to gain access. But if you can do that
really quick,
that's like
they do actually have a free resource called Packet
cool.
Tracer. All you have to do is create a Cisco account, and it's software that allows you to basically emulate in a program
Packet
what a
Tracer
network
hurts.
would do. It does, but man, if you're strapped for resources, if you're strapped for lab material, we're talking about people that they just need to get their feet wet, and it's a free tool.
I know,
And I loved it personally.
I hated it. I felt like I spent more time trying to get it to work right than actually learning with it.
Yeah, but if you couple labs along with it, because there's plenty of them online. So if you
That's
couple
true.
Packet Tracer along with guided labs, which they have, you can find
It's probably not so bad.
multiplicity of those online, and then try to make it work. Home labbing is really important, at least for me.
And so what I was going to say is I personally think CCNA is a $65,000-$70,000 a year job out the gate. Now, I mean, you gotta be able to back that up with actually understanding what you're saying and what you read, not just passing a test, but really understanding it. Those are two different things. But I mean, yeah, man, if you actually understand what's in the CCNA, you can go to an ISP, get a job for $70,000, no experience, none needed. Just show up and know what you're talking about. So that's not easy. You're gonna have a hard time, but it's an option. You can do it.
Yeah, and that's a good like point for us to kind of segue into like the cost of certifications just briefly before we move into our second and third point of like, hey, there is an understanding, right? Like if we're continuing on with the example that Joe Waiter is trying to get out of his, current job, transition into IT in the hopes that he can, solidify a career in a field that he actually wants, you know what I mean? Like we can't pretend that Joe Waiter has the funds, so like, hey, just to throw out there, you may have to pony up for some of these certifications. Now there are programs like, when I was transitioning out of the military, if you're a service member, you may be able to get some of these certs taken care of for free. So that's something you can look into with like, that's just understand that if you're a service member, you have those options, but also as just a regular civilian, I believe that we do have options through like, well, you know what? I'll do some research and put some stuff in the show notes. But there are alternatives to, if you are, strapped for cash. There all are alternatives and programs that are out there that will, so to speak, put cash in your pocket to take these certifications. That's why Microsoft, all of the certs that they offer right now, they have free learning tied to those things and learning that you can use from the start of having zero knowledge all the way into taking the certification. I can also speak to that as well, right? They want you to use their software. They want people to know how to use it. So right now, this is perfect. And again, we'll link all this stuff in the show notes, but just to throw that out there, hey, understand that you may have to spend some money. And if you don't have that money, that's okay. There are alternatives, but certifications are important. If you don't want to go the long way and get the degree path, then you should cert up in some way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? To kind of supplement that knowledge.
There's also, if you manage to land a job and they care about the growth of their employees, you can also get certifications paid for by passing them at certain career jobs. Now that's a little bit more in the mid after you've gotten that initial job, but sort of on the flip side, and something I don't want people to misunderstand is that certifications a lot of times are a foot in the door, but people are going to want to know that you can actually do things. So like it kind of goes hand in hand, but I wanted to point it out because I've rolled up on jobs where they're like, okay, great, you have these things. What can you do? And I have walked into interviews where they said, look, you have a test here and you have a lab over there. Here's what we want you to do. And part of the interview was you got to go fix it. And they're going to grade you on how well you fix it. So just because you have certifications it's a foot in the door and it sets you ahead of the other people that don't. But you have to have some practical knowledge. And that's why home labbing is one of those things I would also recommend is go get your certs. Absolutely, go do that. But also, there's nothing like experience. Getting your hands dirty, getting in a computer, stuff breaking.
They are technically a shortcut to the college degree path, right? But you have to work just as hard. You have to work just as hard. All right. So you're talking about, you know what I mean, going out, finding the information on your own time, your own dime, and then self-teaching. So that way you don't have to go to college. All right. So it is a shortcut, but you are going to work just as hard. Okay. If not harder, depending on what organization or school you're going to. All right. No shade to anybody, but obviously we know that some degree plans at different schools are going to be more challenging, harder than others. So just wanted to throw that out there. I think this is a great, point for us to kind of move on to what kind of jobs you should be looking for and how to get your foot in the door after you've worked on the communication skills, you've maybe acquired a cert or two. How do we get Joe Waiter out of his job in the service industry as a waiter and into, the IT industry? How do we make those things work?
Man, step one is throw out them applications, baby. Get a resume put together.
Fearlessly throw those things out there.
Man, I do not care what they say on the website. whoever put that together, that's a wish list of things. I just got done reviewing. Like my buddy hit me up and he's like, "Hey man, we need a security analyst, and will you please, like, do you know anybody?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, I know somebody." So I look at it and it's like it's got a pay range of 40 grand that they, are willing to pay in. And I look at their wish list and I go, "Bro," and my buddy's kind of worried about it, am I qualified for this? Look at some of these certifications. One of these certifications, you can't even get it until you have 5 years experience in the field, basically. And I go, "Bro, that certification's basically a $200,000 a year certification. If you get that, that's the salary that you can ask for." And I said, their pay range stops 60 grand before that. This is this is the wish list, bro. They aren't
Matt was heated. Yeah.
that's like that's all it is. This is an HR wish list. Somebody went, "We need a security analyst. What type of certifications do those people have?" They looked at the list and they said, "That's the one that seems the most reputable." Right. But you got to remember, like, that's what they're doing all the way down the line. Right. So when you go in there and you get that and you look up that service desk position, it's not going to say user needs to validate identity and reset passwords. User needs to make sure irate customers are less irate, right? Or it's going to say you need to know about all of these technologies, and it's going to ask for a bunch of industry specific stuff that you may not recognize. And you know what? That's not a big deal because it's all teachable. And most people just want somebody who's going to try. And that's why like tying back into the search, that's why the search is so important, because the search are a way of showing somebody that you care enough to try to do something about it.
And on your own personal
yes,
time
exactly.
at that.
And exactly. So, step one is start applying. You have a lot of options for applying. I personally have three that I see very easily. You have government work, you have internal IT positions. So that would be, in companies that are large enough to have their own internal IT department. And then you have managed service providers, which are IT companies for businesses that are too small to have their own IT companies. And, they all come with their pros and their cons, right?
And hey, really, really quick, Matt, I want to take a second and pause and elaborate just on something really, really quickly.
Go for
So there's a difference, a big, big difference between internal IT and any other IT that's not internal IT, right? Which just for the sake of this episode, we're going to, restrict that to MSPs. But I just wanted to explain those right quick. Okay. So internal IT, that's going to be any company with internal IT that are like household companies. Walmart has internal IT. State Farm, the insurance brand, has internal IT. Amazon, Best Buy, like all of the companies that you use daily, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of these companies have IT. And if they don't have internal IT, then they're using companies that are called MSPs, managed service providers. And their job is to go out and support the little guy, the mom and pop shops, the companies that are not necessarily small, but they're just not big enough to have the means to, have their own internally paid for IT team from top to bottom, because that is very expensive. So I just wanted to break that out. All right. And make that distinction between the two of them. Just like Matt said, there's going to be a lot of pros and cons to working in both. And I think we'll cover some of those briefly. I might have interrupted Matt doing that. Matt, I'm going to pass this right back to you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're fine, man. You're good. So yeah, I'm going to go through each one of those. I'm going to do government first. So I want to be clear. I have not worked government IT. These other ones I all have experience with. I don't know if any of you guys have worked government IT. I'm going to explicitly say government non-military. I feel like military needs its own special subsection.
I have some experience with that. Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah. Tell me about it. Sean, please enlighten us.
Yeah. So internal IT is a little bit different. The pacing's different, right? And it kind of depends on where you go. But I actually went the college route. I got an associate's degree and then interned at a government facility. And so the pacing was way different. It was, how do I put this? I don't want to say slow, but the urgency wasn't as much there as, say, an MSP. Mostly because internal jobs usually, once you get the top spinning, it's pretty good. And a lot of people know the network really well, and so you have a lot of managerial directives, and everybody kind of stays in their swim lane. So what I mean by that is, you have the desktop guy, you have the network guy, you have, and you stay in that silo. You don't move out of your directed path very much. Whereas with an MSP, you're looking at more jack of all trade. You are constantly thrown in situations where you may not know, and so you're having to pull in other people, and it's a very collaborative environment. Not that the internal wasn't, not that the governmental wasn't, but it was a little bit different as far as that cross team, because it was more. I get this problem, I work it to a point, and then I then hand off that problem to the particular silo or group that needed to handle that because they have that particular access. Whereas,
and so I'm starting
MSP
to. I'm
not so much.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Sean. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I am like. That's a very good analogy to like some of the, sometimes we get, at the company that I work with now, sometimes we get, junior, resources that come in that start at the service desk, and their previous experience is working at an organization just like that. And what I found is like managing, those types of resources and kind of streamlining their growth it's not difficult, but you have to take a different approach because they're very used to a very compartmentalized approach, right? And normally they're, coming from like call center type environments, not necessarily the government, but the government is a well-oiled machine. So it makes sense that, it would work like some of those other environments where, hey, we need to keep the ball moving. Junior tier 1 resource will work on this for 15 to 30 minutes. And if there is no resolution, well, then they move it to resource number 2, and we keep the ball moving for the sake of efficiency, right? To keep the machine moving, the ball moving, whatever it is, whereas the difference between MSPs and internal IT is... Sean, I'm assuming that's where you were picking back up before I interrupted you.
No, I mean, that's pretty much it, man.
Okay, perfect.
I would say, yeah, no, you summarized that perfectly. I started out my actual career because that was an internship at the government place, which I'm super thankful for, and everyone there was fantastic. It's not that it was a bad job. It was just it was a pacing difference, and that's the point I'm making. The pacing is a little different. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I would say maybe lean more into the MSP sphere if you're looking for rapid growth. You may find some jobs internally where you get really good mentorship. I'm not saying they're not out there, but I know pretty much everyone here got a lot of the growth from an MSP, and that's because there's so much thrown at you. It's like, cliche term, drinking from the fire hose.
It's second to none.
Yeah. The big difference.
I mean, especially this day and time, man, if you've got an applicant, or if you are the applicant especially, and you're able to say, I spent 2 years, 3 years, whatever, a decent chunk of time at a managed service provider, everybody in the industry knows what that is now. They know the struggle. They know the pace. They know pain. That you have the pain to some extent, absolutely. But a lot of people thrive in that chaos. People thrive in that. And you will not, if you're looking to grow fast in the IT industry and you're looking to make waves super, super quickly, you're not going to find another job that gives you as much experience like that as you would with a managed service provider. There's just nothing else.
And
like
that's
it.
I think we kind of glazed over that really quickly, but the big difference between internal IT and, an IT company in the MSP field is that, internal IT, they're going to be, subject matter experts on that organization's tech stack. So,
but
if Walmart... Exactly right. Only that tech stack. If Walmart uses all Microsoft products and they're pushing, Windows Server on all of the servers that support the Walmart ecosystem, all of their internal IT team is only going to be spun up on Microsoft products. Whereas at an MSP, right, we don't just have one client, right? We don't just have a handful of the same client with the same tech stack, right? It is assumed that every client that you have in an MSP is probably going to have a difference, in their tech stack somewhere, right? So what does that mean? That means that you have to curate a team that can do a bunch of everything, right? It doesn't mean that we can't be great at a bunch of everything, but it does mean that every person, every individual that we hire on has to be capable of learning these things. You know what I mean? And so that's what Brent is really getting at. When you work at an MSP for a year versus, looking at an applicant that's worked at Walmart IT for a year, no shade to Walmart, but it is assumed that the applicant that worked at the MSP will have more knowledge and will have gathered that knowledge in a quicker time than applicant from Walmart IT, because he was supporting multiple clients with different tech stacks, different, products, different server software application things, everything under the sun, right? And that's known in the IT space, which is why MSPs are great.
You made a point that I want to circle back to, and that is, it's not necessarily knowing everything. It's knowing how to get the information.
Yes.
So let's be clear here. When you walk into a job, the expectation isn't you must know all of these things rote or out the gate. The want here is for you to go, I may not know that answer, but I know how to either find it myself or get somebody that will help me get a resolution. And therefore, I will then understand what is going on.
And being willing for that second one to find and seek help from somebody that may know more than you that somebody in your immediate circle is really important. And a lot of people are afraid to ask for help, but that doesn't work in tech.
Man, just to be clear, and I want all of the listeners to understand, I have done this with everyone that is talking right now. I have gone to each one of you and said, okay, I'm stuck. I need another set of eyes. I need a different viewpoint. How can I better find out this answer? And I've done that with each of you. And so IT, there's a lot of emphasis on your own knowledge, but you really need to make sure that you can be interactive with your teammates as well and find those resources no matter where or
absolutely. No, that's a really that's a really good point. And I know, Brent, I'm going to lean on you for this reference a little bit, just because, you helped to get me to where I am right today. And a lot of what I, know about my position came from Papa Peden, you know what I mean? On day one, so a lot of what I've learned with managing the junior resources is
same.
The first step, I need to understand what they know and what they don't know, right? I don't care about what information or what knowledge you said you're bringing to the table. You're going to show that to me. Now, I don't mean that in a mean way or an aggressive way, but that's what we're going to figure out first. And I'm going to make sure that you have the time to also learn with me what your guidelines are, right? And we absolutely need to know that. I need to know and trust that my guys will be able to ask myself or their peers or another team lead or another manager for help if they need it. So that way, I trust that in the event they're digging around in a server somewhere, that they're not at risk for bringing an entire client's network down because they couldn't ask for help. You know what I'm saying? It's much more valuable to me. And I would assume Brent, because I picked this quality up from him, I feel like it's much more valuable to me that a resource knows what they don't know, because then I know for sure, right? He's not going to make a mistake. She's not going to make a mistake because they assumed, right? They knew what the answer was, right? Those are paths or things that we can kind of pick up on or feed on. But anyway, all that to say, that was a great point, Sean. I just wanted to really build on that, how important that is, right? IT is, contrary to popular belief, you're not going to be sitting in a dark room by yourself all day, right? Or you might be because of the remote space. Absolutely, it's not a one-man show. You will be collaborating with people, probably more. If you're not in IT now, probably more than you are in your current space. People will rely on you, and you'll rely on others.
Yeah, if you have a problem, admitting mistakes and being accountable for decisions you make, IT is probably not for you. You got to know You got to own your work. You got to own your work.
Speaking truth.
And you got to admit when you make mistakes. You just really do.
We've all just stacked up perfect segues, because that's a perfect segue into our third and kind of final, piece of advice here, which is being ready for continued learning and growth, right? Like, to Brent's point, you need to be able to admit when you don't know something, so that way you can go and figure it out. IT, I got out of the Army because I was not a fan of the monotony. You know what I mean? As an infantryman, I'm going in every day, and when I wasn't deployed, it was the same old thing. We get into a cycle of prepping to train, and then training, and then deploy, and then rinse and repeat, right? And it can get really boring. Literally, you're doing the same thing every day. So I make the transition into IT, and it's like there's some brand new breakthrough every day in tech or cybersecurity or IT in general, right? There's some new platform that's going to make our lives easier, that's going to make the enterprise environment easier. So you have to be able and willing to continue learning after you secure, a foot in the door, because that's what this is. After you get your foot in the door, it doesn't just stop. The pathway, or the drive to go get certifications or maybe go back to school and get a degree, like that stuff may still be needed at some point in your career. Again, this is just a foot in the door. So you have to be okay getting into this career space with having that mindset of I will continue to learn. You know what I mean? And really, as long as you're in this career, that's going to be
very dynamic.
Yeah, dynamically, yes.
I was just told to go get a certification. I haven't had to get a certification in like 4 years. For the record, after you get your first
and Matt, how long have you been in this industry?
I've been in the IT industry for about a decade, and after like the first 3 years, nobody wants certifications anymore. They want to hear about your job. And just the other, like it was like a couple months ago, my boss came to me and was like, "Do you have any certifications?" And I had to be like, "Well, no current certifications." And he was like, "Cool. Well, time for you to go get certifications, cybersecurity insurance, and starting to ask for that stuff." Okay, guess what? Matt has to get certifications now from here out. Like that's it. I gotta have a certification. So whatever company I work for will look at me when I go to apply for a job and say, well, this guy will cost us less on cybersecurity insurance because he has the right certification. So,
and I think that's the point.
I don't want to sound contrary to what we're saying to people, but for the record, I don't have any certifications. All I have is my degree.
Man, the best network engineer,
and that's the same for me, by the way.
I would say the best network engineer I ever knew. He had no degree. He had no certifications, and I think he was a high school dropout. And I'm going to go ahead and say that one of the best engineers that I know is a high school dropout. Man, he dropped out of high school. I don't even know if he went, I assume he went and got his GED eventually, but like he's an amazing engineer. He has a great IT career. I have a pretty good idea of what a salary is, and it's not chump change. High school dropout, man. Just because you didn't follow whatever path you think that you were supposed to follow to get here doesn't mean that you can't get here now.
That's the point. That's the point I was trying to make right there.
Absolutely. And there is no cut and dry path into this industry. And, just like I think we made that point, at the beginning of, the recording, you could go the college way. You could get networked into, the industry, right? Like I don't have a degree. I have some college time, and I've got some certifications. But when I started at the company I'm at right now, I was in a non-technical position. I'm also still in a non-technical position, but like I directly oversee all of the technical talent on the service desk, right? So I picked that up, just like Sean said, working at the MSP, and worked my way up just a little tiny bit. But there are a lot of ways like to kind of move into, a job in this space, especially those entry level like help desk ones, dispatching or as a service coordinator or whatever that is, like there are a bunch of ways to land, a spot in IT if that's what you're looking for. And it's not dismissing anybody's, efforts in looking, but it's like the gate to get in, the barrier of entry is not super high. Not at all.
And see, the thing about it too is there's so many different facets of it because we've not touched the programming side. We've not touched multiple different disciplines of IT. It's a really big umbrella. So the point of all of that was not to say that certificates aren't important or aren't good. It's to say it's not linear. It's not a straight shot. It's, it's a winding snake of a way. And the biggest thing is figuring out, is it a good fit for you? Because it's not for a lot of people. And you may get into it and go, not for me, not what I expected. Or it may click and it's great. But how you get in is really situational and up to you. It's in your hands.
Mm-hmm.
So, just take the initiative and move forward and, shoot your shot. Put out your application. See if you really want to go do that. And then, you may find that you get into systems side and you go, man, I like dealing with computers, I like doing that, but man, the system side is not really for me. You go, okay, well, I'm going to go into security, or I'm going to go into the programming side, or I'm going to go into cloud, or, or Office 365 administration. I mean, there's so many different ways you can get into IT, but it's not a linear path, and that's what I wanted to drive home.
Man, that was really good, Sean. I appreciate that. I do want to give us a quick summary before we go into, some idea of home project that we've all worked on, to give you guys some, or give our listeners, guys, gals, whoever, some ideas of what that might look like. One, take a look what you have right now. Do you have any customer service experience or anything that might be construed as customer service experience, right? It's your resume, sell yourself. Do you have security clearance? That's a big winner. Do you have any administrative assistance experience, especially dealing with C-suite type individuals or front desk type experience? That's all great stuff to get your foot in the door, because it's customer facing. 2, go ahead and grab yourself some certs: the Cisco Certified Networking Associate, the CompTIA A+, or the Microsoft AZ900, that's the Azure 900, and then the AZ 400, that's the Azure 400. And that should give you a good baseline. Any of those certifications should help you start getting callbacks on resumes. Then you just got to sell yourself.
It's a good foundation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all you got to do is do that, and then sell yourself as a customer service advocate. I think that we all agree that you're most likely going to see either internal, company, or MSP, managed service provider positions. The internal stuff is going to be probably a little calmer, but you may not see that same growth. Managed service providers you're going to see a lot more growth. I personally strongly recommend managed service providers. I chose that at the beginning of my career, tactically or strategically, and it has served me very, very well. I definitely recommend that. It's a much harder job. If you ever worked in a restaurant, it's more like working at a restaurant.
Gotta be careful that burnout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard. And then don't forget, you're going to end up having to continue to learn. It's a continued growth career. I just want to throw out some titles you might look for. You're going to be looking at things like computer support specialist, IT support analyst, help desk technician, systems analyst 1. You may see any of these configurations put together, like IT support specialist tier 1, systems desk analyst tier 1. That people just slap these titles together. You're just going to have to go see what's out there. But there should be a lot of there should be a lot of positions, and a lot of them are remote only. So
yeah, just to add in really quick, these entry level jobs are going to range somewhere between 35 to 45K. At entry level, that's what you're going to sit at. And so just to be clear, you might see 50 depending on where you're at. And I guess the other piece there is, hey, the certs that we've thrown out, or the pathways that we've thrown, this is supposed to be for people who are not in this industry, who are looking to get into this industry. And I just want to be very, very clear. All right, with the certifications that we've listed, these are all entry level. If you're out and you're only applying for those jobs that you think are going to net you 80, 90, 100, 150K, and you're not getting any callbacks, and it's because all we have are, a handful of entry level certifications, that's probably why you're not getting a call back. Okay, so I just wanted to be explicitly clear. A handful of these entry level certs does not suddenly qualify you for a systems admin, tier 2 position, or a, you know what I mean? Be aware. All right. And that's fair. That's
never know,
fair.
man.
But
Maybe.
leave those as the exception, not the
I've seen crazier things
not
happen.
not the planned route.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Last, we loosely endorse / recommend going to udemy.com. That's udemy.com. They have a lot of course discounts, and it does a pretty good job or the site does a pretty good job of giving you information so you can pass these certifications or get the knowledge that you need.
YouTube would be another one.
Yeah, you got to cross train here. Yeah.
Definitely don't just go do Udemy and be like, I'm going to go take the A+ and then be like, oh, dang it, Matt, I failed. Don't do that.
Udemy is good, in my opinion, for if you're not sure at all, like, hey, I want to get into the IT industry, but I have absolutely no clue specifically what I want to do in the IT industry. Go buy a couple of cheap courses for some of the things that already kind of maybe borderline interest you, things you've seen before. You're like, man, I could do that. Go take a few. It's low cost usually when they're on sale like that, and just go through a couple of the courses.
$15.
Yeah, like you're not hurting anything. $15 is worth the investment in your career to figure out exactly what you want to do, and so you don't actually, you may save yourself some time in the process, and kind of narrow down your search a little bit.
And it did help. I can co-sign Udemy as well. And just like Matt said, I mixed what I was using. So I used Udemy, and I think for the Microsoft certs, there was one certification where I used Udemy and the Microsoft like free material that they had. That might have been for like the AZ900 cert. So all in all, it was like $20 that I spent to prep for the Azure 900 certification. I had previously no experience or exposure to Azure, studied for 2 weeks, got that test first try, which is crazy for me because the cert before that took me 3 or 4 tries to get. So that one, and it was just a combination of the two, $20 and 20 to 30 hours of studying between 2 or 3 weeks, and boom, we were good. Plus, I guess the cert cost, which was $100, so really it wasn't just 20. Anyways, yeah, good point, Matt.
Yeah. So
all right, so I'm ready for the builds.
All right, so ready for builds.
You have another point. Sorry.
No, I got real quick. I just want to say to Brent's point, there are a lot of fields in IT, very, very, very broad and very deep pool. So if you try systems and you don't like it, that's fine. Try networking. I personally not that much of a systems fan. I mean, I'll do it. I can do it. Whatever. I mean, you gotta pay a mortgage, but
there's some bleed over.
But I mean, yeah, there's always some bleed over. But I mean, I personally, if I had to like choose systems or networking, I'm gonna do networking 100% of the time, and I'm gonna like it better, and I just think it makes more sense to me. So point being that if you don't like this flavor of ice cream, there's another flavor of ice cream that you can try, and you can rinse and repeat that. 50, 100.
It's like Baskin and Robbins, man.
It really is, man. There's so much there, so don't get discouraged. You don't like it, it doesn't make sense. Try something else. Maybe something else make more sense. Sean, since you're all hot and bothered and ready to go, why don't you tell us about your project? What you got?
So I started out with a Windows Server 2000 build, and then joined consecutively up to Server 2012 R2. And I created a domain and made them all work with a functional level of Server 2000. And then joined computers to the domain, and then upgraded it, stair-stepped it, and made it all work.
Was there a reason that you did the project? Or did you just do this on your own? Were you prepping? Were you searching for a job? Or what was the reason you got into this?
So this was actually in school. This was in school. This was a project. But the reason I call it a home lab is because the professor looked at us and said, "You will get no help from me. You have to do it all on your own. There is no course material besides you going and finding the information." And so he said, I don't care where you get that information. It can be on the internet. It can be your classmates. But you ain't getting it from me.
Those are the best kinds of teachers, man.
And so I literally had to build everything like from the... Dude, it taught me so much. I literally was banging my head against the wall over and over and over again against problems. And I go to my classmate and be like, "Dude, I am struggling with this." And so we all kind of worked together as a team and then helped each other out. And, you know, a lot of it I did on my own as well, but that is my favorite example of a home lab that I've ever done. You know, I've done like switch configs and putting a network together and some other things, but that one taught me so much about perseverance when it comes to troubleshooting and finding information when you are butt up against a wall and you're just at the end of your rope with problem solving. That's probably my favorite one.
Fantastic! What a great way to open up. Can I go next, or who's gonna go? Can I go next?
That's a good one. Yeah.
Is that all right? I'm gonna go next. All right, cool. So this is much like Sean. I've done and everybody here. I've done a few of a few home projects. This one though, interestingly enough, I wanted to use this one as an example because this was the home project I was working on to build out my resume. I did not, trying to get into this industry. I didn't have prior technical experience. I had my certifications. Now it was time to build something that showed, hey, I got these certs, but I could also put the knowledge to work. All right. So my buddies and I, we collaborated. I was in a program at the time, it's kind of like a guided course, right? To teach you how to do IT, right? Or with a very specific niche. And so I collaborate with these two guys, and we decided that we wanted to build a website in Azure that was hosted in Azure. And we, for no specific reason, just to do it, balance the website. We had this idea that the website would be heavily used or whatever for our scenario. And so we set up load balancers on like different parts of the country using Azure. And we were able to, we thought that was going to take a lot longer, but it wasn't as hard once we, got the hang of things after a couple days. It took us a while, but we had a bunch of time left over. So then it was like, okay, well, let's do something else. Let's build up, like our DR side of things, and let's test failovers. And what does it look like if the load balancer on this side, goes down while we're experiencing heavy traffic? Okay, well then we'll do this. And so we were able to simulate hosting a website. And the great thing about hosting the website is we posted all of our notes, our project work and notes on the actual website. So I was able to use this in job interviews. I could go in, I put the project on my resume, and I think I only had the opportunity to talk on it once, but literally right there in the resume, I said, oh, thanks for asking about that. Here, let me show you. I got it pulled up on my phone. And I could send them, I sent them the link and talk through the project while we were there. And literally like that, I was entry level, right? But this job was for like a $65 an hour project. They were looking for somebody to build an Azure network in Nashville, and nobody had the certifications that I did, which was insane. So they were willing to listen to me. I obviously didn't get the job, but they were willing to entertain me because of the certification in the project. So that's a great point to our our podcast episode this month is get some certs, do some projects. Bingo, bango, bongo. Who's next?
Brent, you want to go, man?
Sure. I mean, I don't have anything really specific. I don't know. I've always tinkered. I think tinkering's a big one. I think that's just kind of a quality that has been a little bit lost. I feel like on the current generation, I don't feel like people tinker as much because there's just so many resources to kind of skip ahead to almost kind of like, I don't have to tinker to get this knowledge. I can just watch YouTube and I'm done. I just know how to get from point A to point Z, and I skip all the points in between sort of thing. But I've always built all my own machines. I've always built all my own networks. I mean, everything about, my current setup is all done by me. All the networking, all the kind of wiring and configuration, the home lab little server I've got set up. I always recommend that for people getting into the field. Playing around with virtualization is a lot of fun, but it's also kind of like, I feel like you need to know it. So like just dropping VMware or ESXi on something, or Hyper-V, even playing around with some VMs, tinkering with scripting and stuff like that, PowerShell, Python, JavaScript, all that sort of thing, or all that sort of stuff really comes in handy in a number of different jobs, really, especially though, once again, driving that whole managed service provider point back home in terms of being kind of like a jack of all trades, or I like to also say like a Swiss Army knife.
That's a good one. Yeah, I like that one.
I mean, Yeah, the Swiss Army knife, man. You know a little bit of everything. You may not
Swiss
be an
Pete
expert
knife.
in any one thing. Yeah, the Swiss Pete knife. Yeah, but I mean, I've worked on so many little things. I'd say my most current favorite little kind of Frankenstein project would be my streaming computer that originated as an Optiplex. Gosh, I think it's like an 8090 or something. I don't know the model number. It's older, but I've retrofitted it with a modern day power supply. You know, because Dell likes to use all their own proprietary stuff with proprietary connectors. That's all been adapted to fit a standard power supply. It has a 3060 Ti video card in it. It has a really high-end AVerMedia capture card in it. And all of that comes together to essentially serve as my streaming computer to stream to Twitch, YouTube, whatever I want to do. Its singular purpose in this world is to run OBS and capture output from my gaming system. And I don't know, I like the fact that it's kind of like a little Dell Optiplex sleeper sitting under my desk with actually like a lot of horsepower in the same Dell chassis.
He said,
Which
race me.
is,
He said, race me. See
which
what
is a
happens.
great point. Like, hey, just really quick, if you don't have any technical experience, but you know how to, build a computer, that's enough. And I don't imagine that we'd have very many people who would be asking themselves, like, hey, how do I get into this industry with that particular skill set? But if you do find yourself, if you fit into that category and you don't have, any other means for any other, home projects, but you know how to build computers like legitimately and you can talk to it, that's enough. You can put that on your resume as like home projects. And if you can speak to that, that's fine. Again, I don't remember who made the point, but like, when we're hiring people at our company, it's for the junior guys, right? We're not necessarily, we want there to be some technical capacity, but the biggest piece is like the teachability. What's your personality like? Can you work with people? Can you work in a team? Because everything else, we can get you there. We can get you that in a safe-ish environment. I'm joking, definitely, but we'll get you there. That stuff is teachable, but we can't teach a personality, right? So that's why that stuff was a part of that first. But anyways, Brent, I'm sorry I cut you off. Did you have anything else, sir?
No, that's it for me as far as my home lab example.
Sick.
I think we got Matt left, right?
Yeah.
Yep, got me. All right, man, my favorite labs have always been the ones tinkering around with the firewalls and then creating the labs for other people. Right? It's where I tinker with a firewall and I create labs for the people.
Oh yeah, I've done those labs. I've done those labs.
Like the one that was so cool was where I created all those virtual firewalls nested like multi-layers deep, and I was able to issue
that was
everybody
actually
their
really
own
cool.
firewall, and then I was able to teach everybody how to connect up to their firewalls and how to connect, and that we were basically able to simulate like an internet service provider situation, and like set up VPNs with partners and stuff like that. Like that's really cool, and it's cool because I think it's cool to see the technology work just in general, just like, ooh, wow, that's neat that those electrons do that. And I also think that it's cool because I value sharing knowledge, and because I it's a constant learn position, man, and so I like helping people also do that constant learn. Also, it helps me learn, man. There ain't nothing better in the world for teaching a subject than having to teach, like teaching yourself a subject than having to teach that to somebody else, right? Because that bubbles up any question straight to the surface real quick. You may think you understand it, but when you actually go to teach it, that's when you really figure out like where are your knowledge gaps. And if you're good at IT, you go, oh, well, let me go see if I can find the answer to that. And like once again, the key to getting in above everything else we've talked about, the key to getting into IT is having the right mindset. It's taking problems and going, oh, well, I've never seen that before. I wonder what happens if I Google it. Well, that's an error message that looks weird. What if I
Curiosity.
pop that in there? It's being curious. It's wanting to see resolutions occur, and it's knowing that you're there to help make somebody's day better, and like above everything else, like I feel like that's the most important takeaway. If you are not a person who can make other people's days better, and have that be an okay thing for you, you're going to have a really hard time getting into IT. And it's not necessarily like that late career, but even now I view my work as a service, right? That I view very much that I am serving my company in my capacity, and that's very much a customer service thing too. I just have a different client now. My client is the company instead of, my managed service provider client. So that's my 2 cents on it.
That's such a good point. Because at the end of the day, just for some context, if you're on the service desk and you start out low, it's going to be, think of it this way. That person has a problem and they're coming to you for help with that problem. That frustration is at the problem. You get the brunt, but the satisfaction when you solve that problem and the happiness that those people then get from you being able to make their day a little better so that they can get their work done, that brings me a lot of joy.
Good stuff.
It's good. It's kind of like a drug, dude. It makes you feel really, really good.
It is. It's called dopamine.
Yeah, fair enough.
It is a great feeling, though.
Yeah.
So
good episode, guys.
Man.
Yeah, good episode.
I think that about wraps it up. I just want to say thank you, everybody, for listening to our episode. We would really love to hear from you about, if you're in IT and you feel like we missed something that needed to be said, please, please 100%. Definitely come to our Discord, drop by our podcast discussion, and start talking about how we screwed up, and leave us a review.
If you
feel like we were unclear, come over.
Yeah, and all those things.
Come over to our.
All those things will be in our show notes, our Discord link, and everything that we referenced today. All of the certifications, the learning material, some of it being free learning material will all be linked in our show notes. So definitely
free.
give those a peep, and come say hi. Tell us what you think.
Yep. Please consider joining IT. We need more people in this career in cybersecurity specifically. Only 2 out of every 3 jobs are filled in cybersecurity, and it's something that we need as a country to compete globally. So we need this. Please consider joining IT. Please consider joining cybersecurity. We need help.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Ascent podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please come to our Discord channel and also check us out on our forums. Till next time.